We are going to talk through how accessible.org arrives at its scope for a website accessibility audit. Now, most digital accessibility companies should follow a very similar process, but there may be some differences. So let's go over how we arrive at scope. We are currently on the tazachocolate.com website, and Taza Chocolate is a featured Shopify store on the Shopify blog. We're currently on the homepage, and a pop up has come up where we can sign up and save 15% off our first purchase. So, right away, we're going to include this pop up in the scope because it is part of the content and it's the first thing that comes up when someone arrives at the website. So, closing that out now, um, I'm going to go ahead and look at these top left navigation menu links. We have buy, learn, and wait. And as I buy, learn, and visit, and as we hover over each link, we can see that there are several links underneath each. And then continuing on to the right side of the header, we have join our mailing list, contact, sign in, a search icon, a cart icon, and rewards. So I'm going to make sure to include or at least inspect all of these links and or buttons. We've also got free shipping on orders over $49. So this is a link, and I'm going to click on this link for the free shipping on orders. And then we get collections. We have a collections page. So this is very likely going to end up in the scope unless there's another page where we have the same content. Like we have really here, we have a grid of um, different product selections. And so if this same content comes up again, we're probably just going to choose one of the pages. Now, when we're scoping, we're trying to include all of the unique page layouts. But if there's a slight difference, we're probably not going to include the second page. We're only going to include the first page because we don't want to add any more pages than is necessary. The same with content. If the content is mostly the same, then we won't add another page. But if there is significant unique content, then that is when we will add a page to the scope. And just going through tazachocolate.com, I'm going to go back to the homepage. And going back to the homepage, we've already gone through the header. So there's several links and buttons there. Going through the page, we have different links. So there's a read more link. There's a learn more link. And then when we get to the footer is when we can see there are literally, it has to be over 20 links here. And so we're not going to include all of these in the scope. It would just be impractical and the cost would go too high. But what we are going to do is we're going to make sure that we're going to look through all of these different links and determine if anything is significantly unique or if there's a unique layout that we think should be included. If that is the case, then we will add that to the scope. Now, another note is that we probably want to include some of the legal pages, or at least just one, even though they are simple. They're almost always very simple text-based pages, but they are so important. We don't want any accessibility issues to be on those pages. So let's just go ahead and look at privacy policy. Clicking on privacy policy, I'm expecting, this is, again, it's a very simple page, and this is actually on a subdomain. All right, so we have an expandable text box, and then we have a table. So yeah, we definitely want to include this and make sure the table is accessible. The expandable text boxes are accessible, and then we have heading structure in place, etc. One note here is that this is actually on a subdomain, so it's on privacy.tazachocolate.com, and so that is, a lot of times subdomains will be included in the scope because some of the content housed on subdomains is that important. But usually the focus is going to be on just the main domain because a subdomain really is like a separate website. But this is very important. It's also very simple, and we're going to include this in the scope. What we won't include in the scope, though, is where we have a third-party portal. That's not going to be included in the scope because, I mean, it's going to be outside of the website owner's control almost every time, and it's really just outside of the purview of the audit. So that will not be included. All right, continuing on. Let's go ahead and some of these links in the footer are redundant with the links that were in the submenus, but let's go ahead and click GIFs from the footer and then see what comes up. So if we click on GIFs, yes, we're definitely going to include this page or a page like it because this is very important. We have a number of products, and again, we have this grid. We have 3 columns and a number of rows with all of these types of different products, and then there's even a page 2. So we're definitely going to include this page in the audit. So let's go ahead and click buy on the hot chocolate mix. And then the page that comes up is a product page. So the product page for sure gets included. This is very important. This is a primary user flow. This will definitely be in the scope of the audit. So we have the product, we have a you may also like section, we have details, certification. This is a very important page and we're going to include it in the audit. Now I'm going to add the hot chocolate mix to the cart. And then here we have additional content, item added to cart successfully. So let's go ahead and view the cart. So as the cart comes up, we're definitely going to include the shopping cart. So we have an item, we've added it to the cart. We can update the cart or we can check out. I am going to click check out. As we click checkout, what comes up is the mostly standard Shopify checkout page, but it's been customized for Taza. And then so we see a number of form fields. We see form fields for payment and really just your standard checkout. So this would be included in the audit as well. And so I am going to go back. Let's see if I can go back to Taza Chocolate quickly. Yes. So really, we're just going to continue on the same line of thought, and we're just going to look through different pages and try to see if there's anything unique that we don't already have in the scope. So I've come across another bar. We have or another page. We have it's a bars page. So that's the heading one here is bars, and this looks very similar to the other product. It's like a product search page or a product category page where we have different products showing up. So I'm not going to include this in the scope because it's largely redundant. And just going over here, we've got to learn more. I'm going to click on the learn more and see what comes up. We believe both farmer and chocolate maker, and then it continues on learn more. And then so okay, we're definitely going to include this. We have Taza direct trade, and then we have a paragraph. We have some additional links on the sidebar. It almost looks like a blog post, but I don't think it is. Let's see, we have a transparency report, read now. Let's go ahead and open this because it might be a PDF. It might be a page though. I don't think it's a PDF anymore. Let's see. The transparency report is a page. So again, we'd probably want to include this unless Taza doesn't think they should, but there's significant unique content on this page. We've got a map. We've got it looks like the co-founder and CEO has a year in review. We've got an image of that, an image of him standing in front of, it looks like cocoa beans. And then we've got an infographic talking about the key trade indicators. So there's just a lot here. We're definitely going to include this. We've got more. These look like blog posts, but I think they're reports at the bottom. So yeah, I mean, this is where things can keep going and going and going. And we've come across we've got a partner report, and this is it's a region in Ghana. We've got another infographic, and then another graphic talking about the supply chain. So this actually might not be included just because if a developer is going through the audit and we've really have an extensive scope where we've covered all the unique content, they really don't need to know about the same things over and over again. So we probably wouldn't add this page. But me going through this different trail here, this just demonstrates how audits can really, really grow. And so you as the website owner, you want to think about, at what point do I want to stop this? At what point can we figure this out ourselves? because with a lot of the content, it's not that difficult. Where you really need the audit is with the code aspects, the more technical aspects, the more the pages with the more interactive elements. That's where the audit is going to yield the most dividends. Now, the pages with content, yeah, there are very important accessibility issues on the pages with content, but it's very easy to learn about the accessibility for content. So it's really not that complicated. So if you're looking to pull back on the total cost of your audit, then that would be a good way to do it, is to focus on the content pages and then just learn about the web content accessibility guidelines. And my WCAG course would be great for that, because it's just a one-off purchase, and then you could quickly learn. You could have your team learn about the web content accessibility guidelines, and the content aspect of accessibility would not take that long to learn, and it's very simple to implement. It's not that technical. All right, so continuing on, let's just continue looking through a few more pages, and here we come across the blog. So usually, almost always, the blog's going to be included, because this is really like a hub for the content. And so that's what is showing here. Is we've got 6 different blog posts coming up. The first of which that shows up on the page is 15% of web sales donated to Boston Women's Fund. And then we've got categories, and we can click on these categories and go to these. And so with the snacks page, it looks like additional blog posts under the category of snacks. So we're not going to include this. It's just not that it's not that different from the blog post page. But then if we click on an actual blog post, let's see what comes up. Let's see how unique this is. Okay, the blog post is what I suspected. It looks like the reports page. So I'm not going to include this blog post. And if I did include a blog post, it would be only one, and I would try to find one that had more unique content, because when we're coming up with a scope, we're going to find all of the accessibility issues within that scope. And so what we want to do is not cover every last page, but give the developer all of the accessibility issues that they need to be aware of and account for with all of the rest of the pages that aren't in the scope. Because this website, tazachocolate.com, just as an example, it could easily be 75, I mean, well beyond even 75 pages, because you got all the blog posts, etc. But we're not looking to get all of those additional pages, but we want someone to know. Maybe it's the web content manager, it's the marketing manager, whoever is going to be taking care of content. We want them to know what issues come up in the blog post, and then that way they can go address all of the other potential issues in other blog posts. So that's what we're doing. It's not trying to find every last page, it's trying to find the pages that are most important for the website owner and their team. So then I've clicked on an Our Process page. This looks like a unique content page, but I don't see a lot of unique content. I mean, I know it's just not significantly different from what we've already gone through, though there is a video. So because there's a video, this might be included, or I might look for another page that has more going on to include. But this page does have, links to shop, and we do have some information here. But it's other like the video itself is noteworthy, because we want to make sure that the videos are accessible. But this page isn't that. It also doesn't have that much unique content. So let me go to the recipes page. There might be a lot of images with graphics on them. So let's see. We have our featured recipe. Let's read the recipe. And one thing to look out for with the scope is when it comes to PDFs. If PDFs are on the website, we want to account for those, but those wouldn't be in the audit scope. That would be more something where we let the website owner know, okay, you do have a PDF. We recommend you remediate this, because PDF accessibility issues occasionally do come up in lawsuits. But the PDF would not be our focus here, and you don't audit PDFs. You just go ahead and remediate them. So here the recipe took me actually to a blog post, and let's see if there's, we just have some images and then recipes. So again, nothing significantly unique here that I'm going to add to the audit. And then so I'll click wholesale, And I think you're starting to get a really good idea of the scoping process. And again, this looks like we've ended up at a page where the format is very similar. We do have a contact form at the bottom, so that is noteworthy. We do have a video. So this might be the page that I key in on because we've got the video, we've got a contact form, we've got here the ability to shop wholesale prices, and this is going to take us to an external website. So note that if you are the website owner and you have links to an external website, but you are routing your audience to a potential, well, you're routing them to an external website, but it's to an external experience, but it's also by way of your website. So you're really having someone go through a different experience, but it's also because you directed them there. That can open you to liability. So just know that the traditional way to think about this is if you are a restaurant and you have an app or you have a seating reservation and then you send someone to a seating reservation app. Well, if that app is inaccessible, then that can come right back to you. So there's definitely risk there. And then so we have some contact information here. We have some different images. I might include this in the audit scope because we not only have the video, now we have the contact form, we have some other content, we have this card in here as well, and it's got a button. I think it's a button. Maybe it's just a link. I think it's just a link, but um, we've got unique content, and so maybe here is something where we want to take a stand, add this to the scope. But we've gone through a lot of different pages and a lot of different screens. Note that with the checkout process, even if the URL remains the same, there are going to be screens that are a part of that process. We're going to include those, and so those are going to count towards the audit. But if you want to pull back on the price of your audit, just determine what pages you as the website owner can look at the pages and just determine this is what I want to include, and we don't need all of these other pages. And so that can really, really help bring down the price. And then there was one other point I wanted to make on that. But yeah, like the price is really up to you. And so what you can do is you can get the scoping back, the recommended scope back from the auditor. And you can also, or not from the auditor, well, it could be from the auditor if the auditor is scoping it. But you can get that recommended scope back and go through it, and you could talk to me about it where you're like, okay, these pages, do we really need them? And I can explain why they were included and why you may not want to have them, or why I really recommend that you do. When you get the scope back, it is a set of recommendations, but budget is obviously of concern. So if the audit price is too high, then you can bring it back down by lessening the content. So this is the scoping process, and I think this will be really helpful to understand like what goes into the audit, because audits are so arbitrary to so many people, and the cost. People look at the final cost and they don't usually a lot of prospective clients, they're not looking at how many pages are included. And so if you take an audit scope and you go from 25 pages to 15 pages, that's going to dramatically reduce that quote. And that's not a problem. You can definitely do that. You just don't have as expansive of a reach. But you always want to include a core set of pages. And so your primary unique layouts, your page layouts. So we talked about the blog posts, and that's a very familiar layout theme with Taza Chocolate. So we'd want to have that page layout for sure. And then we want to have the primary user flows. So, the contact, the sign in, and then we're going to, if you're going to this link, you're going to want to add in the pages that are behind the authentication. And that way, you've got a comprehensive audit and not just one that has the external pages. But this is the process. This is the thought process, and it is very much a manual effort to go through these different websites and come up with an audit scope. But this is part of the service. It's not something you pay for. Obviously, this is pre-sale. But if you want to do it, it's definitely encouraged, because that way you're in control. It saves us time. But if you want us to do it, we will gladly do it and check out your website and then send you a recommended list of URLs. So this is all talking through the accessible.org scoping process for website accessibility audits. And so if you are interested in an audit, I will include links in the description for accessible.org. If you would like to learn more about accessibility so that you can better understand what's going on when we're looking at the accessibility issues and the state of accessibility on your website and how complex it is, also, as I talked about with the content accessibility, if you want to have your content manager learn about the web content accessibility guidelines, that can help you know what pages that are more content. And when I say content, think of videos, think of images. If you have any podcasts or any isolated audio files, that would be included as well. Potentially documents, although documents really are a different type of accessibility, but I would file documents under content, and then also text. So when you have blog posts, the text there can be accessibility issues there as well. But like I said, they are easier to fix. So if you would like to train your team so that you can take care of more of the content issues and you can just remove those from the scope, I recommend my WCAG course. It is available at WCAGcourse.com.